let's start with the AOC's tweet here.
Ah, Jesus
And
fucking
this
Christ.
is where I begin to go, wait a minute, what are they saying about? Because remember, or maybe were you in that stream? Oh no, it was me, Rome, and JB. When this was going on, when this was breaking news, it was during the stream. Because people, and Zoya was one of them. She was in the chat and she was like, breaking news, coup attempt happening right now in Brazil. So I knew what was happening. But when I got out, off the stream, Nick, I did not expect to see people like AOC and Joe Biden and like John Fetterman does it too, shouting out to Lula. I was like,
you
what
remember
the
we
hell?
covered this when Lula first won, when Lula won.
Yes.
When Lula won, you had a bunch of these. You had AOC who never tweeted about Lula. She knows nothing about his politics, and then she was like, "Oh, congratulations, Lula!" Lula, who's extremely critical of NATO, who said we should pursue peace in Ukraine. Lula, who wanted a deep-in relationship with China. You had the squad who voted for weapons to Taiwan. The squad who's explicitly anti-China. John Fetterman literally said in the debate that China is our biggest foreign policy threat. Lula want to work with China, but those same people was like, congratulations, Lula. Thank you. These people had no idea who Lula was. No idea about the politics. They had no idea how different they are than someone who's not even that far left. Lula not even that far left. That is how far gone they are. But go ahead, CJ, because you're on the same path that I wanted to go on this part.
Yeah, because so I'm good. So good. I wasn't feeling by myself. So nearly 2 years to the day, the U.S. Capitol was attacked by fascists. We see fascists moving abroad attempt to do the same in Brazil. We must stand in solidarity with Lula's democratically elected government. This is like not necessarily projection, but there's a lot of things in this tweet I want to address. So nearly 2 years to the day. Do you think it's a coincidence that this is happening January 6th? I mean January 9th? Do we think there just happens to be a visually similar thing, that insurrection that happens in Brazil by these far-right person who just was in the news a few days ago, how he's chilling in Orlando? Do we all just think this is all coincidences? That's the first thing. Do we think that's a coincidence? It's not a coincidence that this is it gives the United States politicians the ability to do just this. Just this. And this is what I have to say, Nick, about propaganda. It's not telling you directly. It's setting the conditions for this tweet to be believable. It's setting the conditions. You see, what do you mean? It's not just us. Look, it's happening in Brazil. Now, what if they just staged this just so the United States can do whatever they're going to do about January 6th? Because something coming. There's some sort of right or privacy that's going to be stripped away from the United States. Go ahead.
And I mentioned this earlier. It's known that Steve Bannon has a lot of influence on the Brazilian right, and there are a lot of right-wing figures that was grooming the dumb Bolsonaro supporters to do this. The same way you had the Brazilian police, guide them to the area. The Brazil police taking literally selfies with them. The governor, who's now been was taken away. Yeah, you can definitely see why there was a vested interest in making this happen. And there are people who are, I've seen a lot of dum-dums. I see a lot of Bolsonaro supporters or American right-wingers, because there are a lot of like these right-wing populists that I've seen who pretend that Bolsonaro was they're clowns. They were trying to pretend that Bolsonaro was the populist support. So they would say, oh my God, this is a false flag. There's actually Lula supporter that was there here to make Bolsonaro look bad. And the reason why they said that because this make Lula stronger than ever. Because now you have right-wing elements in Brazil that are distancing themselves from Lula after this. Despite the fact there was a large coalition of right-wingers in Brazil that was like, oh my God, this whole election is not real, it's not legitimate. We're going to have a military take over. A lot of them directly calling for that as well. So I think a lot of the U.S. media are just taking advantage of this because they need to sell January 6th. So they see this. The Democrats are like, let's use this to sell January 6th. And the Republicans are like, let's use this to tell people that the liberals are still in the elections on the global scale. So you see how this benefits both class. I think that's how we approach it, because we're very critical in our analysis, like in terms of what side benefit from what. Like why would, like we ask the question of why instead of just saying it out loud.
Right.
I think that's what you're doing as well. So that's all I have. But go ahead, CJ. I'll pass it to you. I got
here's John here's John Fetterman's tweet right here. Now this is John Fetterman, Mr. Israel, Mr. I fund Israel, whatever they
Yeah,
need
he
guy.
hates China. He hates China with he remember.
Yeah.
I know I said it before, but in the debate with Dr. Oz, he was asked what is the biggest foreign policy threat, and he said China. I covered it when it happened. That
Oh
is
my
who John Fetterman is,
God.
and that guy is pretending that he's standing in solidarity with Lula. Get the fuck! You see how they
Yes,
use
he's my bad. Go ahead.
I was like, you see how they, and if you look at Tweak, I think you get into this as well.
Yes.
They use this to sell January 6th. They don't give a fuck about Lula. That's what
and look who he's quote tweeting. This is what I was gonna say. Of all people, he's quote tweeting Anthony Blinken.
I didn't see that part. I didn't see it.
I was trying to keep it low so you couldn't see it. I was trying to keep it low so you couldn't see the Anthony Blinken's name.
DJ,
how are you quote tweeting the State Department clown in support of Lula? This is the guy who's orchestrating what's happening. What you talking about? This is laughable clown shit. This is what this tells me is that John Fetterman is just tweeting to support Democrats, whatever they're saying. He has no he has no clue of what's going on here. So that's what that tells me.
I also want to add another element. This is something I was thinking about when I was going through the story. Since look at this tweet. Keep the tweet up. Because you guys know I gotta do a little decolonization of your minds here. We condemn the attacks on Brazil's presidency, Congress, and Supreme Court today. Using violence to attack democratic institutions is always unacceptable. We join Lula in urging an immediate end to these actions. And this is why you see a lot of liberals, including one of the most violent men who has a government position in the world. Anthony Blinken is the most violent. Yes. Like, God, I want you guys to really start thinking about war crimes this way. Think about state violence this way, as if it was an individual crime, right? Anthony Blinken, Obama, Joe Biden, these people are the most violent people that hold government office in the world. Meanwhile, look at the message they sent to us, though. You should never use violence to attack democratic institutions. But they use violence on us all the time. It's called tear gas. It's called rubber bullets. It's called a baton. You guys see how never ever use violence this way. But we will use violence to you. We will bomb a country. We will send weapons. We will use weapons to go to war with Russia because we don't want to negotiate peace. So violence is always the answer for them. But they're using this opportunity to say, you guys see how you guys should never ever use violence. You guys should stay civil. That is another way to look at it. I know that's slightly off topic, but that's another way to look at this tweet. But go ahead, CJ.
No, what I want to do is break down this lawyerly statement and how he's really not even. So let me say this. So we condemn the attacks on Brazil's presidency, Congress, and state court today. Now, do you understand? He's not saying anything about Lula at all. He's saying he condemns the attack on the presidency, the Congress, the office of the presidency. He's not mentioning Lula specifically.
That's a good point.
Because he's literally writing a tweet about January 6th, and he's just tagging Lula. That's literally this is a January 6th tweet. Yes. Go ahead.
He says, but to your point, remember how I said these people are deeply institutionalists? They have no ideology. They just care about upholding the institution. That is it. So that's a good point. I didn't really think about that before. They're not sad about Lula. They're like, oh my God, how dare you attack the Brazilian institution that allows someone like a Bolsonaro to exist? They love those institutions.
And he says it in the next sentence. He says it. He doesn't say the word institution in the first sentence, but that's what he's describing. He lists institutions. Then this is all about January 6th. Using violence to attack democratic institutions is always unacceptable. Why wouldn't you say just it's unacceptable? Because he's applying this to us. Always is not even needed here. To attack democratic institutions. We join Lula. Now, he doesn't say we join Lula and keeping him in office. Look what he says here. We join Lula in urging an immediate end to those actions. This does not say we aren't behind the coup. This doesn't say this at all. This is so carefully written right here. And then we have the clown car of progressive politicians quoting that guy, John Fetterman. Just astonishing, Nick. Got a couple other ones here. Now, when you say the point you had about John Fetterman in China, what was that point again, Nick? What did he say? What was a big thing that he said about China?
I'm pretty sure I think there was a clip. CJ's gone, but there was a clip where John Fetterman essentially was asked on the debate. Let me see if I can find it. What was the biggest foreign policy threat? He said China. I'll dig it up when I get a chance while we wait for CJ to come back. But I want to show you guys some breaking news. I want Bolsonaro. Oh, there's CJ.
Yeah.
Bolsonaro is in the hospital now. This shit is getting even more ridiculous.
Wait. Oh, I thought that was a joke. He's really in the hospital?
I was hesitant to report on it as well, but I see this in Reuters because I saw a lot of people tweeting about it. Okay. Bolsonaro in hospital. Oh man, that dude is the sickest dude ever. How is he still alive, dude? If you guys don't know, Bolsonaro was in the hospital so many times. He was near death so many times throughout the course of the presidency. Like he had colon issues, intestine issues. He had, I think, COVID real bad. Like, so anyway, this is funny. I was just saying this while I was waiting for you to come back. I just saw this. But anyway, you can finish your thought.
Yeah, so yeah, let me show you a couple of more tweets because I did tweet about these clowns.
The China thing. You were asking about the China thing. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Yeah, the China thing about John Fetterman. That was the last thing I was asking you because to me it's almost like he doesn't have an ideology. I'm for Israel. I'm against China. I'm against Russia and for Ukraine. And now in this instance he's for Lula. It's like he's just like everywhere. It's almost like he's not guided by any sort of
this guy is not thinking about
ideology.
Anything. He ain't thinking about anything. This man just taking it whatever directions of the Democratic Party. I wish I could find a live stream. I found the tweet I did, but I can't. I gotta find a video where he said it was his debate. I gotta find it was his debate against Dr. Oz. It was a foreign policy segment, but it was crazy. There also a quote I saw where he said it's absolutely ridiculous to talk about defunding the police. So John Fetterman, like all these puppets in the suits, they're not driven by ideology. They're the actor, and they get directions from the party, and they follow those directions as we see from the members of the squad. But go ahead, CJ.
And you got Hakeem Jeffries. I mean, this guy has been now he's a leader, and I see his tweets more. Like he seems very low intellect. Like he's literally just somebody just giving him instructions. There's no way that brain. Yeah, there's no way that brain contains any sort of level of level of intellect at all. Yeah.
Like you guys, he's had no charisma. He's just repeating Democratic Party lines. And once again, they were just using this Brazilian attack to sell January 6th. There's not going to be any complicated analysis. There's not going to be any discussion how U.S. companies and U.K. companies will propping up Bolsonaro because they wanted to privatize the area. No, there's going to be no conversation about U.S. media being complicit. And there's still a lot of people in Brazil to this day. And one of the reasons why there are a lot of Bolsonaro people that radicalize that believe Lula is just super corrupt politician was free because Brazil is this corrupt communist state. And that was complete. And U.S. media and complicit Brazilian media helped with that. And if you guys don't know, Glenn Greenwald and many other great journalists helped free Lula because they proved that those charges were propped up by Bolsonaro to imprison him and the far-right government. So you guys see how these things are fundamentally different than the fucking pillow fight, political theater that happened on January 6th. Nigga, there were no stakes there. In Brazil, Lula was fucking imprisoned by Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro offensively used his militaristic police force to go after activists. We talking about two different countries with two different political realities, but Hakeem Jeffries, AOC, and the Democrats are like, oh my God, see, Brazil had their own January 6th. You guys see how they dumb everything down? And I promise you, if you tune into TYT and a conspirator who cultivates the dumb left, watch them. I guarantee you they're about to say the same damn thing. It's coming. It's coming.
Bolsonaro goes to hospital when he has indigestion. The guy is a drama queen. Wow.
Yeah.
Here is Hakeem Jeffries' tweet. The violent attack on the heart of Brazilian government by right-wing extremists is a sad but familiar sight. We stand with the people of Brazil and democracy. This is literally a sentence. That first sentence, he's describing the United States, the January 16th, and he just substitute Brazilian government here because he's clearly saying the violent attack on the heart of the Brazilian government by right-wing extremists. You understand they're using sentences that can be interchanged with January 6th. That's on purpose. That's literally what I'm getting at. Go ahead, Nick.
And people like AOC and King Jeffries, they tweet this also. A lot of dumb-dumbs like, oh my God, see, they like Lula. They must be progressive. They must be hip. But look at what the tweet. This is a lie. This is what we should remind every single Democrat who tweets this. Look at the last part of the tweet. We stand with the people of Brazil and democracy. Since when do you guys stand for democracies in Latin America? As Venezuela, you guys literally invited Juan Guaido to speak at Congress. So whenever you hear Democrats bring this up, no, you guys literally intervened in a democratically elected government in Venezuela. Was silent when Bolsonaro waged his offensive attacks against the indigenous people. You guys do not stand with democracy. You're virtue signaling, and this is why people hate liberals in the Democratic Party. That is what they're doing. They're taking a real thing that happened in Brazil and trying to make it about their fucking bullshit political theater January 6th.
Yeah, and the thing is, and you're not seeing this from you're not seeing this from Republicans, of course, because they're not down with the January 6th hearing, but to see Democrats do this sort of, trying to confuse people about what's happening in Brazil and what happened here as if it's similar. I'll take this down. I think I'm done showing it. The tweet. It's just what I find disturbing, Nick, and it just goes in line with what has been happening with progressives, is that progressives, people who other progressives call progressives, are participating in it, and that was AOC. They are participating. Like, it's one thing to go, I'm part of the Democratic Party, but it's another thing to go, I'm going to go and be one of the sales pitch people to sell all this garbage that they're selling. Like, that's a whole different another level that, to me, that should be cancelable as socialists. That should be cancelable as leftist people who are looking to politicians. There needs to be something that cancels a politician. And we've been saying they've hit a bunch of those things, and there's the professional managerial class that's saying no, they haven't, like Mike Figueiredo. But just seeing one thing after another coming from these progressives is disheartening for me. And to see that from AOC is like, there's literally no need. All you could have just said, I stand with Lula, like what Ilhan did. Remember, she got elected and she refused to say anything but happy he was elected. It was like, good luck, Lula, and that was it. But for this, you got a whole lot of propaganda to insert. It's like they're completely gone. There's no more people. There's no more squad. There's none. Go ahead. Not even the fake narrative is what I'm saying. There's not even that anymore. Go ahead.
They are literally imperialists. They're imperialists. And to wrap up the Brazilian segment, I'll just read this part here, and this is why this will always be fundamentally different. I'll explain this at the beginning of the stream. Brazil is a country that, like all Latin American countries, have been victim to colonial influence. And I'm not talking about just direct violence influence. I'm talking about the most extreme elements of their society was propped up by the West, because the most extreme elements of their society is more willing to sell out public land. They're more willing to sell the capitalists in order to instill their ideology. You guys understand? That's why they take advantage of our social conservative movements. Because, hey, if we can instill our socially conservative ideology in our government, we don't care if we sell our lands to Western companies. So just so we can have a moment of learning here, this is why this is big. Because there's a history of right-wing violence influenced by Western-style intervention. And this is why You had Steve Bannon and a lot of right-wing elements that were trying to spur Bolsonaro's supporters into doing this. Let me read this real quick and wrap this up. Britain's hidden hand in Brazil's 1964 coup d'etat. And they talk about how UK helped the US by providing covert propaganda. That's just what they're saying here. And they helped install the brutal 21-year-old military dictatorship. And by the way, this military dictatorship, Bolsonaro served in. You guys know that? So the right-wing fascists that's in Brazil, they can mark their lineage directly to this military dictatorship that have used violence to take over and maintain political power before. And now they are following tradition. They're not bullshit January 6th hysteria. This is real shit that changed governments in Brazil. I'll just read the first two paragraphs here. They talk about how in March, a military coup was launched against João Goulart. The Brazil's democracy was already fragile. And then Goulart was doing the land reform. This is what I was explaining earlier. While standing the vote to Brazil's illiterate population, that incensed the country's political, military, and business elite. So you had the business elite and the military and the political elite that was against him for spreading the ability to vote and having agendas and policies that helped the average proletariat in Brazil. So that led to the military coup. And that led to the military dictatorship, where over 400 individuals were killed by the Brazilian military, and many more were disappeared, tortured, or imprisoned. And then they talk about how Washington D.C., the United States hand in the coup is well known. The CIA began pouring money into the country covertly, so they wasn't telling people. So this is why we are allowed to ask these questions, and you're not called conspiracy theorists if you do, when we say we think the CIA is involved. Because whenever the CIA is involved, people at the time don't know. You guys understand?
Yeah, it's always later.
It's always later. In a few years, you're like, damn, the CIA actually played a role in the Bolsonaro coup attempt in Brazil. So
what we do is say, let's use our critical thinking skills and see if there's any signs, any sort of a United States coup MO that's all on the handprints of this, and all of the leaders and corporate media all projecting to Lula about this is a key tip-off point to me.
Absolutely,
key tip-off point.
Absolutely,
for me. Go ahead.
You 100% right, and that's why I'm gonna do the exact opposite approach, where I'm assuming the CIA to proven otherwise. Whenever I see, especially far right, like when I see the same pattern of far right people escalating violence in the country, that's literally what the United States done in Latin America for years.
Overthrowing people. Come on, let's be serious. Who else is overthrowing people, Nick? Who else, Nick? Like literally, there's not an overthrowing happening without the CIA either being like consulted on, because they train all the other corrupt people. Like, come on, man. Let's this what we have to get the proletariat is out to start thinking innocent to proven guilty for your country, for your government. Stop thinking
deserve no benefit. They deserve no benefit of doubt.
Proven innocent. It's guilty to proven innocent for your government. For this government, for this imperialist government. Like, that's literally the way we should do it.
Absolutely true.